Welcome to The Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the news from the global economy. Today we cover India to cut energy imports and boost growth. And as Bolivia's poor become richer, so does the architecture. First, the headlines. The United States and Britain said Nigeria's election results may be subject to deliberate political interference. Given the tight race between President Goodluck Jonathan, a Christian from the south, and his Muslim challenger Muhammadu Buhari, tensions run high. The vote marks a pivotal moment for Africa's most populous country and for the region as a whole, as it takes on long-standing economic problems. But before tackling economic issues, the new government will have to contain religious and ethnic strife while also curbing Boko Haram's spread. Emerging markets private equity group Abraj raised more than $1.3 billion for two funds investing in Africa. It is the largest amount amassed for direct deals across the continent. The Dubai-based group capped its Sub-Saharan Africa fund at $990 million, higher than the $800 million it originally sought to raise. The North African fund will probably end up oversubscribed at $340 million, exceeding its $250 million target. There has been a surge of private equity interest across sub-Saharan Africa, with U.S. group Carlyle making its first investments in Nigeria and South Africa last year. Abraj manages $7.5 billion of assets, of which it has deployed $3 billion across Africa. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras sought a consensus in Parliament after his proposals failed to satisfy his European creditors. Tsipras addressed the opposition, asking whether they would back the national negotiating strategy to put an end to austerity. Greece and its creditors are still far apart on an economic overhaul plan required to allow disbursement of aid. But as opposition leader, former Prime Minister Antonis Samaras cautioned Tsipras to make a deal, his own ministers warned against retreating from campaign promises. Argentina is struggling its last-minute efforts to use the Byzantine global payment system to distribute money to bondholders defying a U.S. court ruling. Buenos Aires asked Euroclear and Clearstream, the European-based central securities depositories, to help pay interest due on Tuesday. But neither is likely to comply, as New York Judge Thomas Grisa last week barred them from processing any debt payments by Argentina. And while the Argentine government tries to circumvent the U.S. ruling, the U.S. court may now move to prevent all bond payments by Argentina. Pitching for an energy-sufficient India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi wants to cut oil imports while exhorting domestic firms to become global players. But as Modi aims to ramp up India's economy and its growing population, he may have to look for alternative sources of energy.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced in recent days that India will embark on a program aimed at reducing India's energy imports by 10% by 2022, and meanwhile target 10% economic growth by then, according to the Reuters report. The pitch came at an energy summit in New Delhi.
We import about 77% in the energy sector today, in coal, gas and petroleum. Can we dream of at least cutting down 10% from the 77% imports and achieve 10% more growth by 2022, when India celebrates 75 years of independence?
India imports around 80% of its daily gas needs, and just days before the announcement, India signed 6 agreements with Qatar on issues from investments to energy. Trade between India and Qatar hovers just over $16 billion annually, with most of that money finding its way to Qatar because of those gas imports. India's oil consumption is supposed to go up by just over 3% next fiscal year, according to India's Energy Data Organization, because of Modi's focus on economic growth. Despite the challenges, the controversial prime minister has his eyes set on greater energy independence after the first hurdle is jumped.
Once we are successful in bringing down the imports by 10% and achieving a growth of 10%, I assure you we can bring the figures down to 50% by 2030.
India used just under 13% renewable energy sources and 59% coal in June of last year to power electric needs. While the renewable number is impressive by some counts, India faces rapid population growth, and the country will have to look further into clean technologies and sustainable infrastructure if it wants to keep its energy costs down and its economy on the rise.
India seeks to cut oil imports and become energy sufficient, but what alternative sources of energy will it have to tap into until it does? David Kainan, Deputy Chairman of the Israel South Indian Chamber of Commerce, joins us now on the phone. David?
Good evening, Benjamin. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you very much. So energy is the backbone of the Indian economy, the world's third largest energy consumer, carrying the potential to spur growth in all other sectors. What can Modi do in the short run to boost domestic energy production?
Well, in the short run, what we see right now is first a lot of very good relationship with Iran first, in order to get relatively cheap oil from Iran. Secondly, in his recent visit to Australia, Modi has secured an ongoing supply of nuclear fuel for India's nuclear reactors, which were in shortage till lately, and by that reducing the energy cost in India furthermore. Slightly in the longer run, Modi is now changing the entire coal economy of India. India has the second largest reserves of coal in the world, but till now, due to so many bureaucratic reasons, it was not being utilized and used. And actually, India used to import coal while having coal, many coal reserves. So what we see right now is a drastic change in the regulation of coal mining in order for India to be able to use its coal for internal process, for internal usage.
Okay, various questions based on what you just mentioned. First of all, I mean, there was just an article today saying that there had not been any crude imported from Iran pending the an agreement being reached between Iran and the 6 world powers on nuclear energy in Iran. If this deal, in fact, does not get reached, what do we see happening? What chances does India have of getting oil from other places? And as far as coal is concerned, I mean, coal is highly polluting. Is that not an issue for India?
Iran and India had a very good relationship for the last couple of thousands of years. Okay, it is important to understand that these relationships are far beyond any kind of local geopolitical issues or anything which has to do with the U.S. or any Western powers. I do not expect India to stop buy oil from Iran in the foreseeable future. It might be that way or another. It might be reduced a little bit, but I do not expect India to stop completely buying oil from Iran. Other alternatives which India has is to buy gas from Qatar, by which, again, I would a little bit divert here, but the main thing which one of the main thrust for Modi since he resumed office was to significantly enhance the geopolitical relations between India and the various powers and other countries around the world, with Australia, with Japan, with Israel, with the US, with Russia, even to China, but definitely a major focus on his foreign policy foreign policy activities has been strengthening ties with the leading energy producers, including Iran, including Qatar, including Saudi Arabia indirectly, and other countries.
Okay. Now, the main interest here for Modi is to cut the import of energy. Is there other, I mean, aside from the coal, how would the Modi government pursue the development of the local energy industry?
So maybe the most interesting development in India when it comes to energy usage is solar power. About 5 years back, India put a target of 10,000 megawatt by the year of 2020. When Modi resumed office, he doubled the target to be 20,000 megawatt by the year of 2020 and 40,000 megawatt by the year of 2025. And that would make India to be by far the largest producer of solar energy.
Okay, well, Mr. David Kainan, Deputy Chairman of the Israel South India Chamber of Commerce, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Benjamin, and a great night over there in Tel Aviv.
Absolutely, thank you. A new colorful architectural trend has taken on Bolivia as the Aymara heritage of a growing indigenous middle class has become increasingly prevalent. And as formerly poor neighborhoods become more rich in color, so did their residents.
Just a few years ago, foreigners wouldn't have dared venture here, one of Bolivia's most impoverished and dangerous cities just outside La Paz. But El Alto is slowly turning into a tourist attraction, thanks to this new colourful architectural trend, the chalette.
Down in La Paz, they say people up here aren't so rich. But we're here and we see great signs of wealth, despite the jungle and all the beggars. We see beautiful buildings like this one, and it's pretty striking.
Chalette is a combination between the word chalet and the ethnic slur cholo, which refers to Hispanics of indigenous or mestizo heritage. These luxury buildings have mushroomed in El Alto since the 2006 election of Evo Morales, the first president from the country's indigenous community, who has put the Aymara population at the forefront of his economic policies. A growing indigenous middle class is now able to invest in real estate, and they're increasingly proud of their Andean roots.
Economically, El Alto has changed quite a lot since the arrival of our President Evo. There were always rich Aymaras, but they kind of used to hide. Now we're no longer scared to show what we have, what we like, and what we want to do.
The rise of chalettes, which cost between 200,000 and 800,000 euros, also shows that El Alto itself is doing better, as it benefits from Bolivia's solid economic performance over the past 8 years. Tour guides like Wilfredo Poma have tapped into the city's economic revival to showcase indigenous culture to the world.
We give them a full tour. We show them Andean cosmology. We tell them about social struggle, religion, access to education, women's place in society. But chalettes are what strike people the most.
With multicolored buildings and a new sense of pride, Bolivia's indigenous bourgeoisie is changing the face of its poorest neighborhoods.
Now for a look at some other newsworthy items with I-24 News journalist Daniel Roth in Media Watch. So Daniel.
How's it going?
Good. I understand you have a story about cooperatives.
Yes, cooperatives. We've reported on this before, the cooperative phenomenon. This is something that started hundreds of years ago. It has its beginnings in the UK, but has spread around the world. Now there's 30,000 cooperatives in the US. There's hundreds of thousands more, maybe millions around the world. It accounts for an enormous part of the global economy. Cooperatives are essentially workers that collectively own a business, or consumers that collectively own a business that they buy things in, or some mix of the two of these. And sorry, go ahead. Yeah. And REI is the example we're using in this case. REI is a billion-dollar business in the U.S.
Okay.
This is backpacks, yoga pants, climbing gear, things like this, that is literally billions of dollars. And the interesting thing here is that cooperatives get a bad name. Cooperatives sound like this hippie sort of thing that you do because you want to be nice. Actually, all the research shows that cooperatives tend to be more, have more longevity than regular business across the board.
Because there's more people actually personally invested, so to speak, in the concept?
Exactly. There's a number of reasons. There's the personal investment. There's when there's the personal investment, when there's less chance for groupthink, by way of having more people involved in decision making. You also have more long-term thinking if it's managed right. So of course there are cooperatives that fall down on their face, but by and large the research shows that these businesses do better for longer.
Right, and isn't it true also with REI actually specifically that they are incredibly successful financially?
Yeah, so the story came about, of course, in Bloomberg. They weren't just trying to highlight cooperatives because Bloomberg doesn't tend to do that, but this business brought in $2.2 billion last year. $2.2 billion. So for the 5.5 million members, they get a dividend at the end of the year that makes a big difference in their pockets and is the place where they go shopping for these things.
Just for reference, I mean, they're essentially on the same level as North Face. I mean,
yeah,
they
did better than both high-end and low-end. Walmart, they did, you know, they were just doing amazingly last year. And part of the reason is that it's a cooperative business, that people see that and they like that and they want to be a part of that.
And presumably they actually have good quality.
Right, and this is the other thing. When you have consumers who are part owners, they want the best quality stuff that they can get. They want the best quality things, so they get to be part of the decision-making process of getting those best quality things. In most cases, there's different models, different cooperatives work based on different models, and it's a really interesting story to watch.
Interesting to hear about more cooperatives in the future. Thanks, Dan Roth, for joining us.
Absolutely.
That is the end of our Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at IT24 News. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares. Thanks for watching. Join us again tomorrow for more on the economy.